On October 4th, 1947, at the Sunshine Mission Home for Women in Los Angeles, just 5 miles from the heart of Hollywood, a 40-year-old woman died of pneumonia, her mother by her side. 2 decades earlier, she had been known as the Joy Girl, a beautiful and talented star of the silent screen and one of the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood. But when she passed, she was penniless and forgotten, her only possession a framed autograph photo of herself from her glory days. Her name was Olive Borden, and her later days of poverty and obscurity remains a haunting reminder of the fleeting nature of fame. Olive Maria Borden was born on July 14, 1906 in Richmond, Virginia. Her father, Harry Robinson, descended from one of England's most distinguished families, while her mother, Cecil Agnes, who went by the name of Sibby, traced her roots to the celebrated Shields family of Ireland. Olive was the great-great-grandniece of General James J. Shields, a celebrated figure who earned distinction during both the Mexican-American War and the American Civil War. It has also been rumored that she was the 4th cousin of the infamous Lizzie Borden. The Bordens welcomed a second child, another daughter, Cecilia, sometime in 1907, but tragedy struck the family as her father passed away after being ill for several weeks on September 28, 1907. And Olive's baby sister would also pass away on July 8, 1908, at less than a year old. Although Olive grew up in Richmond, she attended several Catholic schools in Maryland. She attended the St. Michael's Convent in Baltimore, Maryland, the Sacred Heart Convent at Norfolk, Virginia, and the Mount St. Agnes College at Mount Washington, Maryland. During her school life, she became interested in athletics and dramatic pursuits, particularly was her ability noted as an all-around athlete. While attending school in Norfolk, Miss Borden displayed considerable talents as an amateur actress, taking quite a prominent part in several school plays. After she graduated, she moved with her mother, all the while cherishing a secret ambition to win fame on the screen. Even when her father was still alive, working as a cook, the family struggled to make ends meet. Things were worse once he was gone, so Sibby came up with a way to bring in more money. Widowed when Miss Borden was only a year and a half old, Mrs. Borden started a candy store in Norfolk that developed into a confectioner's establishment, and finally, before the girl had finished her convent schooling, into 2 establishments. While mother's business was growing, the daughter was dreaming the dreams of girlhood. By the time the second store reached a paying basis, the daughter set her heart on being a star in filmdom. When I was 16, I began to realize that somewhere in the direction of the setting sun, there lay a city where marvels of fame, wealth, and success were obtained if one could only find the key. One day I said to my mother, "Let's go to Hollywood. I'll be able to find work on motion pictures, and then we'll have a cunning little bungalow with loads of flowers and maybe a Ford." My mother is, luckily, the type of person who believes in allowing her child to follow whatever career she desires, providing it's constructive. Therefore, within a short time, our little family boarded a train for that mysterious but alluring city of Hollywood. Part of the allure of Hollywood may have been sparked by her cousin, Natalie Joyce. 5 years Olive Sr., Natalie had already made a name for herself, performing with her older sister in the Ziegfeld Follies before launching a film career in 1922 with a string of 2 reel comedies for the Christie Film Company. Olive's mother made a bold decision. She sold both of her candy shops, and together, mother and daughter boarded a train and headed west. It is likely through Natalie's connections that Olive found her first foothold in the world of motion pictures. We arrived on Tuesday. On Thursday, I had not only made the rounds of the studios asking for a chance before the clicking cameras, but also had been engaged for small parts at the Christie Studios. For 3 days, all went well. Then I was informed by the director that I had better try something besides the pictures. Olive's first opportunity in Hollywood was a bit in a Christie comedy where she was to imitate Leela Lee. Now her acting instructions had been nil, and what she knew about acting was sketched from the heave and smirk school of emotions. She romped all over the stage and grimaced into the camera. The director was tired and frank, brutally so. "You'll never be an actress. Go back to school. Go anywhere, but go away." That night I went home to mother and wept my first tears of disappointment and discouragement. The discouragement was short-lived, however, and I woke the next morning as full of determination as ever. Then followed weary weeks of being told, "Nothing today, I'm sorry," at various casting offices. To provide a source of income, her mother opened a little confection stand near the University of Southern California to sell sweet bits to the students. However, that proved unsuccessful, and soon the mother and daughter were struggling just to eat. When Olive was 16, she went to California and was given her first opportunity to appear in pictures while visiting the Christie lot. However, her first attempt was not successful, and Miss Borden almost gave up the idea of being a motion picture actress. She was much too young, her friends said. But Olive proved the fallacy of her friends' judgment by forging steadily ahead after she entered the pictures by the comedy gate. After getting an extra part in the 1923 film Children of Jazz, she was hired by Jack White and began acting in his comedy shorts. It only paid $7.50 per day, but at least it was work. She usually played small bit parts, but also occasionally got a chance to play the lead. Olive Borden has a leading girl role in the mermaid comedy featuring Lynn Conley, which Fred Hubbard is directing for Jack White. "I hope nobody misjudges me," says Miss Olive Borden, Jack White comedian. "If my ears are pink, it's only a blush at being exposed to the public gaze after their long seclusion." From Jack White, she moved on to the Hal Roach Studios, in which she continued to play small roles, often uncredited in short after short. Now, however, she was earning $10 per day. It was while working for Hal Roach that she, along with her cousin Natalie, were picked as one of the Wampus Baby Stars of 1925. The Wampus Baby Stars was a promotional campaign sponsored by the United States Western Association of Motion Picture Advertisers. It began in 1922 and it honored 13 young actresses each year whom they believed was on the threshold of movie stardom. Much is being said these days about the chances that Olive Borden will have to make a name for herself on the screen. She is a popular girl at the studio and she has charm and beauty. Most of her work about a year or so ago was playing leads in Jack White comedies. The parts that she had were small, but they enabled her to evidence a very pleasing presence. Of late, she has switched to vamps and two-reelers with Arthur Stone, and because such parts have illuminated more than her talent for acting, the impression exists that she will soon be bidding for her chance in dramatic features. The most beautiful girl I've ever seen. Olive Borden is one of the few actresses who did not enter motion pictures by accident. With her, the whole thing was carefully planned out. Following graduation from a school in Baltimore a year and a half ago, she induced her mother to come to Los Angeles. Miss Borden is 5 feet 1 inch tall, weighs 105 pounds, has jet black hair and dark brown eyes. And it was through the Wampus selection that she was chosen as one of the 14 beautiful ladies to be in Paul Bern's new film, The Dressmaker in Paris. It was a small part playing one of 15 mannequins, but she began to get noticed. Her rise to success in filmdom was from the drab trails as an extra girl to $7.50 per day. Later, because of her athletic ability and beautiful figure, she was able to enter the $10 a day class as a Max Sennett bathing beauty. With the first 2 steps gained, Miss Borden served an apprenticeship in comedies. In The Happy Warrior, Miss Borden has her first feature role in the more serious dramatic work. "I put my soul in my work," Miss Borden says. "I had to. There was a time that I wouldn't have been able to eat if I hadn't." About this time, J. Stuart Blackton, casting The Happy Warrior, was in search of a young girl, brunette as to hair and eyes, vivacious and possessed of a vibrant personality. He heard of Miss Borden and sent for her. As she walked into his office, Commodore Blackton rose from his chair and cried, "You look as if you had just stepped from the pages of the book. You get the role." Olive Borden, who is without a doubt one of the most beautiful girls that ever came to Hollywood, has been selected to play a lead role in J. Stuart Blackton's production The Happy Warrior for Viagraph. Miss Borden, who is one of this year's Wampus Baby Stars, has worked on various comedy lots. Her first appearance away from the slapstick realm was as a model in The Dressmaker from Paris, and from that she stepped into the leading role in a Blackton picture. I've never met the young lady, but if she has the intelligence to match her amazing beauty, she's certainly to be a sensation, I'm convinced. Her big break came when one of Hollywood's hottest directors of westerns cast her in what many consider his greatest silent picture, 3 Bad Men. Miss Borden, and then making a grim fight to hold her place in the motion picture world, was working in Truckee, in Northern California when Mr. Ford, watching her work before the cameras, but under another director, commented upon her beauty and artistic ability. "Watch that little girl," the famous Irish director said to his assistant, engaged upon the gigantic task of preparing for another film spectacular. "Someday she will rise to stardom, and then she will do great things. If she doesn't, then I'm no prophet. She's got the ability and the pluck." It was when things were at the worst for the Bordens that Olive had her chance. Dissatisfied with the small parts in which she had been cast, the young lady flared up in protest, a dark fury launching honest opinions on an emotional bolt. Instead of showing her the exit door, the Fox officials for the first time sensed her capabilities, backed off respectfully, and handed her a 5-year contract. Noted photographer praises Miss Borden. About Olive Borden, newest Fox film star, Max Audrey, the noted photographer, has this to say: "No mistake has been made in putting this talented girl under contract. She has that joy of life and the vital inner fire which lifts her character impersonations out of the ordinary rut." But working out in the desert, Olive learned a lesson about drinking impure water. Olive Borden stricken. Olive Borden, Fox screen actress, is dangerously ill on location far out in the desert. She is to be rushed to Hollywood today. Here we have a picture of Olive imitating director John Ford. Now, she worked with George O'Brien on this film as well as Fig Leaves, and the two allegedly began a romantic relationship. For years it would be assumed the two would marry. George O'Brien, the Sir Galahad, the unattainable, the hands-on young Irish lad who has given many a heart thrill to the queens of the silver sheet without even knowing it, and has seemed to shun the fair sex like a plague, has at last fallen under the spell of a charmer. And this girl is Olive Borden, a new Fox discovery who is to be starred. Olive is young, beautiful, and unspoiled, and the little romance is a pretty and charming thing as one could wish to see. Reminds me of a love story out of those good old-fashioned romance novels. Priscilla Bonner was supposed to have a big role in Three Bad Men. Olive Borden played the lead, and Olive was just so beautiful. I played the character Ingenue. Lou Telligen was in the picture, and he beat me with a whip. It was very dramatic, but I was all cut out. Olive Borden was so adorable, they used 3 reels of her and cut out everything that was dramatic in the picture. By the time they got through, it was mostly Olive taking a bath in a barrel. Olive Borden, the young brunette who recently signed a long-term contract with Fox Films, is to be starred in Yellowfingers, a South Sea story in which she will have the dramatic role of a half-breed girl. Miss Borden, who received her earlier dramatic training in Southern convents, is said to be the most colorful personality ever brought to the silver sheet. As her success quickly rose, including a series of films with Western star Tom Mix, a big question about her appearance was being reported in the papers. It would be a subject that would come up again and again for years. Olive Borden still retains long tresses. Southern Girl, one of the few film actresses yet unbobbed. Olive is one of the few girls in motion pictures who can still boast long hair. "I have no objections to bobbed hair," the youthful star told her interviewer, "but I like my hair the way it is, and I don't intend to cut it off just to be like the rest of the girls. Some say long hair is hard to manage and give that reason for a bobbing, but personally I have no complaints to offer. I arrange my own hair and generally manage to get to the lot on time. What more can a girl ask?" Shocking, in films but has no hobby. Olive Borden, beautiful, dark-haired daughter of old Virginia, who has just signed a long-term contract with Fox Films, discovered while appearing with Tom Mix and My Own Pal at the Earl Theater this week that she is short one perfectly good essential. The essential, dear to the heart of every gay young debutante of Hollywood, did not disturb Olive in the slightest degree. In fact, she hadn't even thought about it until a newspaper woman showed up on the Tom Mix set and requested an interview. The interviewer asked the fatal question, "Miss Borden, what is your hobby?" "Oh my goodness," Miss Borden faltered, "my hobby?" "Of course, you must have a hobby." "But I haven't." "You must." "I can't, can I, Mama?" "Not unless you have one," said Mother Borden. "Then that's settled," said Olive. "I never had one and don't want any." And here's an article I came across that I don't understand yet found amusing. It has been decided by someone on the stage and on the screen that a South Sea Island dame can wear as few clothes as the ocean and get by with it. I have seen this happen many times on the stage, and being connected some way with the South Sea Island, we expect to see some female shake a wicked piece of shredded wheat, or that which should be covered by said shredded wheat. The fact remains that Olive Borden is a quaint-faced little heroine of this Yellow Fingers melodrama, doesn't use shredded wheat, but another garment about as scanty. And how Olive can wiggle! She must have heard that Gilda Gray had packed her shredded wheat and had gone into movies. And so Olive goes Gilda one better by doing the same dance without shredded wheat. Gilda has no monopoly on wiggles. Olive proves that in Yellow Fingers. In late August of 1926, Olive was in the hospital having an appendicitis, but there was good news. A mountain Canadian peak was named after her. And the controversy continued. Olive Borden has decided after all not to bob her hair. Her luxurious black tresses have been a boom to her in many pictures. It is probable that Olive Borden would have not starred in 4 of her pictures if she had a bob. All 4 parts made it essential that the actress have luxuriant and long hair. "I dress my black hair simple," declares Olive Borden. "Men hate elaborate hairdress and love silky hair plainly arranged. I avoid bobbed hair as I would poison, for I still believe that beautiful hair is a woman's crowning glory." Miss Borden's mother had stubbornly refused to allow her daughter tresses to be bobbed. Instead, they are brushed 40 minutes every morning and evening, and as Eve in Fig Leaves, the wisdom of her foresight is demonstrated. Olive Borden is a girl who suddenly found herself not only a popular screen player, but an actual star. And she is scarcely 20 years old. Not only is she graceful and young and beautiful, but she has surprised everyone by proving she can be a real actress and screen personality. "When you're near the top," she says plaintively, "that's when you must work and work and work. Many ready hands are waiting, eager to pull you down. I spent 4 weary, soul-searing years trying to arrive. Have I arrived? No, no one ever arrives. One keeps on keeping on. David Blasco was never satisfied with a player's best. When the world thought Frances Starr was doing her most marvelous work, he kept on saying, 'Work, work, work. Keep on working.' That's what I want to do. That's what I must do. I came to Hollywood looking for work. After a bitter struggle, I found it. Now I must prove that I deserve it." Olive Borden now owns a nice new car. One issue she was having at the time was the fact that in every film she was in, she was required to be in a bath or dressed in revealing lingerie. She was so embarrassed by her state of undress that she avoided being seen. When Olive Borden, because of her constant state of undress for her daring screen roles, rode from dressing rooms to sets in closed cars to evade prying eyes. At this point in Hollywood, studios were trying to cut salaries to many of their actors. When it was time for her contract to be renewed, even with all her success, Olive was either asked to take a pay cut or she was not being given the raise she expected. There was also apparently an issue with her being temperamental on set. I think the real reason might never be known. Olive Borden to quit Fox. Olive Borden, who grew up from small parts to the role of featured player at Fox Studios, has split with the picture concern over the size of her salary for next year. Announcement from the officials at the studio said Miss Borden's contract, which 2 years ago was written to cover a 5-year period, would be terminated next November 20. During her 2-year association with Fox Films, Miss Borden has appeared in 11 pictures. Just what her future plans will be is not certain, but the report is she may accept an offer from United Artists. According to reports, Miss Borden has been receiving $750 per week and would have received $1,000 under the terms of the new contract, but it is said that she and her mother held out for more money. Miss Borden is possessed of beauty and personality, and her acting ability, while questioned by critics at the beginning, has been steadily growing until she is now considered one of the big drawing stars. In talking of the matter of leaving Fox last night, Miss Borden said, "Both Fox and I are entirely happy, I'm sure. We simply couldn't get together, that's all. My plans are not yet set. I think it would be wonderful to be with United Artists, but so far there is absolutely nothing to say. I need a rest, however, and my mother and I may take a trip. Yes, Europe is a possibility, but we have no time yet to really plan anything." It is reported that United Artists are seriously after the services of Olive Borden, a Fox star, who has just given up her contract over an argument in salary, it is said. Irish Olive Borden has temper. After 2 successful years on the Fox lot, Olive again ran into bad luck. Fox officials declare that she is becoming too temperamental and broke her contract, and that was just at the time when all producers were starting their war against temperamental players. Olive found it practically impossible to get another job. Olive Borden was getting $1,750 a week, they tell us. Came time to renew her contract, which called for a raise to $2,000 a week, but the producers, following their economic program, announced she could continue at her old salary and work every week or take a raise for a 40-week year. And Olive became temperamental and refused to listen to any halfway propositions. Incidentally, a very wise bird whispered that she did it of her own free will, not even listening to the advice of her mother. What with $80,000 a year, some folks feel that 12 weeks would have offered a good chance for a trip to Europe. Perhaps Olive plans on a longer vacation. How much was she getting paid and how much was she offered by Fox varies from report to report. And then there's the idea that her being let go had something to do with her temper. In later interviews, she addressed both. "I was perfectly willing to renew my contract," she says, "but I wanted a chance to do something worthwhile, and they wouldn't let me have it. I was willing to be a sweet young thing or a wicked vamp, or even the closed horse I had been in so many other pictures, but I put down my foot when it came to being all 3 of them at once, without rhyme or reason. I was weary of being told by directors, 'We'll have you do everything, be everything in this film.' I was allowed no say in the selection of stories, just plunged into one after another. Rushed to Canada and New York and Florida, hurried through 3 pictures in the time it took Moreau to make Sunrise, and in 2 years was never offered a real vacation. I have been criticized on the score of putting on the dog because I used my car for driving short distances, from set to dressing room and so on. The stage, many of them, are across the street from the little bungalow I occupied. Obviously, I could not run back and forth in a bathing suit and other scanty outfits. When Fox first began its program of expansion, I was told the important plays and books had been purchased for me, even that I was going to go abroad to act in them. Just as suddenly, the plans were changed, and that's exactly where I had been before." "I don't think I was ever temperamental," Olive once told me. "I merely knew what kind of treatment I had the right to expect, and I expected it. I act the same now as I always have, and nobody in any of the other studios where I have worked seems to consider me temperamental. I whined and I pleaded for better roles for so long that finally my temper flared. They were shocked and called me temperamental. I was justified in kicking, but my manner was at first too subservient, then too demanding. Perhaps I wasn't tactful. When I saw the decrease in my popularity and then read the criticism, I begged them to feature me in good parts, instead of starring me as a dressed dummy. They claimed I was becoming ungovernable. Well, it was my career that was being tilted lopsided. The deepest hurt, for which I am not to blame, was calling me temperamental over minor incidents, like driving across the street to the other lot instead of walking when I was in a negligee for a scene. I have been game, working when ill, enduring discomforts as we all do. An actor crabs, but we all do it as a matter of course. I am sorry for having fought over salary. That was unwise. It stamps you as a troublemaker. And none of us are worth, in comparison with all the other vocations we might follow, half of what we get. I regret going grandiloquent and being sassy, and I am buku glad it's all over. Now, it is often reported that Olive's real name is Miss Sybil Tinkle. I believe that rumor began when a 24-year-old man named Joe Acton Tinkle was killed in an auto accident. A friend of Joe's, who was in the accident with Joe, told reporters, "His sister, you know, is Olive Borden, the motion picture actress, but he seldom talked about her success. He was a modest fellow in that way." I wonder, and I'm guessing here, if Joe maybe told a little white lie to his friends, but I don't know. Joe did have a sister who went to Hollywood to be an actress named Sybil, but she never made a film. I've also read reports that the whole Tinkle family from Texas thought Olive was Sybil. It is still reported today that Olive was Sybil, but those reports are just plain wrong. Anyway, after Fox, Olive took a long time off before going back to work. One of the first pictures when she came back was called Virgin Lips for Columbia Pictures. However, Olive was always a free spender and never saved her money, and life without a weekly paycheck was taking its toll. In a 1930 article by Myrtle Gebhardt in Picture Play magazine, Myrtle wrote, "2 years ago, when her split with Fox occurred over a disputed salary and other differences, she had a half-paid-for $65,000 Beverly Hills home. It was expensively furnished on the installment plan. Affluence marked everything with a grand gesture. The upkeep for the magnificent home totaled $1,700 a month. 4 servants saved her from the least exertion. The garages housed a fleet of motors. The modiste's bills were enormous. Had the Firefly been shown a fur coat costing less than $3,500, she would have been insulted. When the weekly emolument stopped, Olive sat in the midst of her grandeur and laughed shakingly, her humor a bit uncertain, having been smothered for 3 years. Besides, it quavered against a background of tears. There was hurt in her laugh, and irony, perhaps hysteria, fight too. With a snappy gesture, she sold the furniture that was paid for, returned the rest with her apologies, fired the servants, moved to the beach, and later to a small apartment. Not a penny in the bank, Olive said at the time. Oh, don't look worried. We eat, maybe go to a football game. Almost any girl taken from obscurity and spotlighted, highly paid and catered to, would go haywire. Precious few have escaped that stage of distorted viewpoint, unless they have very wise management. And how is one to know? One accepts the suggestions of executives, of professionals. Soon one is in a whirlwind of do this and don't do that. With no previous training that would have developed judgment, only exceptional cleverness or intuition could have selected wisely from all this proffered advice. I wanted money, a lot of it. Why? I don't know, except that earning it pleases ego. Spending it wheats vanity. It adds to that absurd importance. With the inflated estimation of self, the more money you get, the more money you want. It increases prestige. And it is handy to purchase palaces and such trinkets. Olive filed for bankruptcy. And at the same time she was going through all this, she made it clear about the rumored upcoming marriage to George O'Brien. "You can't concentrate on 2 things at once," she declared with assurance, "and I will not marry until at least my mother and I are economically independent. It takes a very clever woman to hold her husband in this business. I still have a fairy tale idea of marriage. Oh, I think divorce is necessary if you aren't happy, but when I see all those domestic split-ups, I am frightened. Marriage should be the crowning glory of a woman's life, and at least now, when I am concentrating every thought upon my career, I would be afraid to even think about it. Over the next few years, Olive made films for Columbia Pictures, Film Booking Offices of America, known as FBO, and then RKO Radio Pictures. Even one with her cousin, Natalie Joyce, called Dance Hall, in which Olive wore a blonde wig, because it was thought that most dance hall girls were blonde.
You don't know what you're saying.
Oh, yes, I do, Mrs. Flynn. And to think I wanted you for a big brother. Never thought you could be so selfish.
By now, however, talkies had taken over, and some assumed that it was sound films that caused her popularity to fail. Or maybe it was the fact she did something she said she would never do. Perhaps with the idea of reviving her career, she cut off her hair.
The thought, Judy. Yes, Judy, what about it?
Well,
Here's to the poor men we love and the rich men we marry.
Dear old timer. Forgive me my little joke. It's the last one I'll ever play on you. Of course I don't intend that anyone shall have my money but you.
You're not really going to leave us.
oh, you're making a joke, aren't you?
Of course I am.
Oh, say, what's this fellow's name over here again?
But by the 1930s, her film career was just about over, and Olive attempted a career on the stage in New York. Olive Borden, who left pictures when talkies entered the Hollywood scene, will be in the play Louder Please, which was a satire on Hollywood. She'll know what she's talking about. And then in 1931, Olive secretly married a man named Ted Stewart. It was less than 4 months later they separated. One reason, apparently Ted insisted that she give up acting. Ted wanted me to quit the stage, but I simply cannot do it, the actress said. I have been in this profession quite a while and I love it. We could not agree on the subject, so we decided the only thing to do was to separate. But if Olive wasn't definitely sure she wanted to leave her husband, she knew for sure when he was accused of bigamy. Although the charges were later dropped, Olive asked for and received an annulment. A lively little review features Olive Borden, an attractive film personality in person, opened a 3-day engagement at the Drake Hotel yesterday to a large and enthusiastic audience. Miss Borden is a gracious and charming little lady who redeems a limited ability in the presentation field with ease and grace and an eager willingness. In the 1930s, she attempted a film comeback and played in films for such studios as Paradise Pictures and Screencraft Productions. She even went to England to make a couple of pictures, but by the following year, the only film she was offered was for shorts.
Oh, look. Look. No, here. My picture.
And I kiss it every night before I go to bed.
In 1934, in an attempt to encourage filmmaking in St. Petersburg, Florida, Pinnacle Productions shot a couple of low-budget movies in the Sunshine State. One of these was called Chloe, Your Love is Calling. First visit here. Miss Borden said this was her first trip to this section of Florida, and although she hasn't had a chance to look the city over, she declared, I just know I'm gonna like it here.
You're too young to remember, Chloe.
I have a hazy memory of white people and...
White people? Chloe, that's your white blood speaking.
Maybe so. But let's don't talk about it now.
Chloe was the last film that Olive ever appeared in. King Kibo, Chicago World's Fair Gorilla, extends an affectionate and informal welcome to Olive Borden of the Films on her arrival at the Century of Progress exhibition. But don't be alarmed, Kibo is just a stuffed gorilla skin and the fair Olive is not in distress. By 1935, she was acting in a stage production called The Hollywood Review. Now, if there was ever a hope for a comeback, that might have ended when a scandal broke in February 1935. She was being accused of being one of the other women in a divorce trial between actor Walter W. Emerson and his wife. She was married a second time, sometime in 1934 or 35, to a Long Island railroad conductor named John Moeller. As proof of the pudding, movie stars do marry for love. Take the case of Olive Borden, who, not so many years ago as a Fox star, was surrounded with all the glamour and luxury that go with the business, including a maid, a chauffeur, and a secretary on the set with her at all times. Today she is married to a New York railway conductor and living in extreme modest circumstances, and what's more, she's plenty happy about it. And then Olive just disappeared, presumably to live a quiet life with her husband. But by 1941, the marriage was over, and the only stories in the press about Olive were ones such as these. If anybody knows the whereabouts of Olive Borden, kindly get in touch with me. I have some important information for her. Lawyers are trying to find Olive Borden, one-time star who has been destitute. Her long-time bankruptcy proceedings have been settled, and there's some money left over for her. And then she turned up in February of 1943. She had decided to join the WACs. The press made a big deal about her pay as a WAC compared to her time as one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood. I didn't have any children dependent on me. I wanted to help where I could do the most good. I figured the WACs would know where that was. Except for appearances as a master of ceremony in a musical comedy stage review, Miss Borden has not been active in films for 5 years. Olive would eventually be given an honorable discharge from the WACs after a foot injury. It was reported that she would be returning to Hollywood, but that amounted to very little. In 1945, she did enter her cat in the California Cat Club show, but that was all the public heard from her until June of 1946 when she began working at the Sunshine Mission on what was known as Skid Row with her mother. By then, she had gotten religion. By then she was penniless, and it has been reported that it was alcohol that got her to this point, but I have been unable to verify that. Films still call. Does she ever wish she were back in pictures, I asked her mother. Yes, admitted Mrs. Borden. At times. She gets restless, of course. Sometimes looking back, I think I mothered her too much. One day the following year, Olive disappeared from the mission. We called her Ollie, Sister Essie Brinkley West, pastor founder of the mission, said. Everybody loved her. She's still a beautiful girl with soft hands never made for the kind of work she insisted on doing. She'd do washing, change diapers for infants of all races, drive herself always trying to overcome what I know was only a sickness. And then when she was on the verge of winning, she disappeared. But 3 months ago she disappeared. Her mother searched frantically. She found her seriously ill in a cheap Main Street hotel last week. Miss Borden was returned to the mission but sank into a coma and died. Olive Maria Borden died on October 1, 1947, with her mother by her side. She was only 40 years old. Simple last rites, with virtually none of her old Hollywood friends in attendance, were held today for silent movie star Olive Borden, who died Wednesday in obscure poverty. The funeral services were held at the Sunshine Mission for Women, where the 40-year-old former actress made her home since 1945. From the surrounding neighborhood, commonly referred to as Skid Row, however, came a goodly crowd for a last glimpse of Miss Borden, who was a $1,500 a week star 20 years ago. A girls' choir sang, and actor Robert Bice spoke briefly. As her mother, Miss Sibby Borden, wiped away a tear, Mrs. Essie Brinkley West told the gathering, she played her greatest role when she became a star for Jesus. Burial was in Forest Lawn Memorial Park. The death of silent screen star Olive Borden in abject poverty points out one of the cheap charges that can be levied against Hollywood. That charge, boiled down to its essentials, is simply one of rank carelessness where its treatment of individuals is concerned. Olive Borden was only 40 years old. She had been a top-notch star and a better-than-good actress. Surely the industry, if it had bothered to remember her existence, could have found enough work for her to give her a decent livelihood. It's true that the industry provides a charity fund for its down-and-outers, but charity in the case of a still young person who wants to work isn't the proper answer. Olive's mother, Sibby, lived for another 12 years, dying in 1959. She stayed with the mission until the last 3 years of her life, when she was moved into a rest home. Like many of these biographies I do, I find the unanswerable questions frustrating. What went on the last 10 or 15 years of Olive's life? What happened to her second husband? One could only assume that he was in love with her at one time, Was the breakup so horrible that he no longer cared what became of her? I'm sure there's more to it than that, but I'll probably never know. Many speculate that it was alcohol that contributed to her downfall. Maybe that's true, but I couldn't find anything to verify such an accusation. Are many biographies assuming this because it happens so often in Hollywood? Or is there something I'm missing from my research? I'll probably never know. There is very little left for me to say except, Olive, I hope I did justice to your story.